All right. What do you do now?
I think we need to actually get rid of some of the texture and start to soften it a little bit.
Ooh. Because now it's completely dry and then it's very interesting. Wow. So if you have like a semi-wet brush, you can really control how much you move things about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're not yet at least going directly for the values that you see, right? Because it's quite a bit darker.
Yeah, you build up to it, I think.
Yeah.
If you go too dark too soon, you will lose some of the qualities.
Yeah, right, because you want that layer underneath, so to speak, or sense of different layers playing together.
Yes, the white of the paper will make the strongest glowing colors. So it's great to use that to your advantage.
Mm.
But that's a little bit difficult sometimes. It's easy to make a place that's kind of died. I feel like I did that a little bit in the horn, that I killed it a little bit, but maybe I can get it back. I don't know.
Well, it's like what you said in the first session, if you make other things darker and you are going to do that as you develop this, then you might get it back. So you generally get to a certain level in the value, then you sort of start modeling more, and then go back to generally getting darker.
Yeah, I think I like to do the last bit of value. If it's a very textured area, just do it with actually a small brush and very slowly. So I want to get this kind of shadow area around the eye socket, and I'm trying to carve it out with a dry brush.
Right. So you go gradually darker by multiple small strokes. Right.
You can add in different colors and all sorts of...
yeah, so you get that interplay and vibrancy between different colors.
And if it gets too of this kind of texture detail dry brush, you can always get rid of it a bit with either by taking a wet brush and kind of working it, or just doing a wash over top.
Yeah. Yeah, which is like a glaze, and then calms down the contrasts. Besides Andrew Wyeth, then, like, which watercolor painters do you typically study or look to?
I did look at Sargent a lot. His technique is a little bit more clear, but sometimes it lacks the, I don't know, his watercolor is so fresh and light. And
so he paints watercolor more or less like he paints in oil? Or?
Yeah, I think his oil painting is very influenced by the idea of watercolor.
Okay, yeah.
Where you have these very elegant brush strokes. And that takes certainly a lot of skill and talent to do. But there's something else that you can get with rough watercolor that you kind of work with a small brush and go back and forth carving away at what you're trying to paint.
Mm. Yeah, and because you can dissolve and push things around, you can actually be too detailed and then soften it, and it's very not easy, but it's an easily accessible thing to do to calm it down again, pacify it. Reminds me a little bit also of what I've read and looked at when it comes to Lars Hertevig, the Norwegian landscape painter.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
This thing about he would make his own brushes with by stroking the cat and collecting the hairs and make brushes out of that, which must have been very fine and small, at least not very broad brushes. And you can see in his really best works there's a lot of small hatches almost. Not only that, obviously, but you would think that if you work like that, it can easily get too hard and stiff, but it gets a vibrancy.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're sort of detailed, but you don't become too detailed to draw on. If you work long enough with it, it starts to, I guess, mutually neutralize each other, these strokes, and start to vibrate against each other.
Yeah, I think so. And he has very nice ink drawings.
Oh yeah.
And I was looking at those recently, and they're very layered and detailed. They're not so much the modern way of doing watercolor. They're
saving the white of the paper, like a point in itself.
Yeah, I mean, you can save the white of the paper, but right. It's more about this like tiny brush working it, lots of layers, that sort of thing. In modern thinking, or the modern technique, if you use too many layers, more than maybe 3, then you've lost. And if you have to use white, it's a disaster. Things like that, you know.
Yeah, you don't want to use a kneaded eraser, and you want to leave the black and the white of the paper. But I mean, it's but as I say, obviously you can use the white of the paper, but in the so-called modern way of thinking, that's becomes a point in itself, and then it's pointless when you want to create something realistic. Yeah, it's not. You don't really use a lot of water now, do you?
No, not at this stage. Not at all. But there's a lot of different brush strokes you can get, so you can use a slight bit more water and do one thing, or use a little bit less and do another thing, or use almost no water at all and do another thing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more like drawing at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think at a certain point it becomes a little bit more relaxing, where you're just, well, you're talking to Chang recently about meditation. I don't always feel meditation when I am painting, because I'm thinking about a lot of decisions that I have to make, but when I get to this stage in watercolor, it's very meditative, because I'm just copying these little textures of the skull, and it's quite nice.
Yeah, you get. If you talk about meditation, people talk about having me time, but I think the point is to have not me time. You don't want to have all those typical everyday thoughts in your head. You get to focus on one thing, and that's meditative.
This is how you erase. Just a little bit of water.
Yeah, because that's the gouache. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to overdo it too much. It could tear the paper, but a little bit will be fine.
Yeah, and you can let it dry and then go back to it and dig some more, I guess, so that the major problem is if you do it too long on one spot, in one go.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you for checking out this video from the School of Apelles. To watch the full video and access our premium library, go to caveofapelles.com/subscribe and become a $10 patron. That's caveofapelles.com/subscribe.